United Kingdom. That is in the national interest of the United Kingdom to do so, and we work very hard together to make sure the impact of US tariffs on the UK are not as bad as we thought they might be.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Steve Darling.
Question 1.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the entire House will join me in paying tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis, an extraordinary man. His lifelong work on fairness will leave a lasting legacy. And people of all backgrounds and beliefs were inspired by his humility and his compassion. And I think the outpouring of grief and love that we've seen in the last 2 days or so shows the respect and admiration that we've held in around the world. Mr. Speaker, I will attend his funeral on Saturday and pay tribute to his courage and to his leadership. May His Holiness rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, may I also wish everyone in England a very happy St George's Day. There is a lot to celebrate: our history, our values and our culture. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I also wish the Chamber a happy St George's Day. After a cost of living crisis overseen by the previous chaotic Conservative government, many in the tourist industry in Torbay believed that they had weathered the storm, as they had believed in Devon and Cornwall. However, with the government's NIC hikes and effective jobs tax, many in the tourist industry in Torbay fear that this could be the last nail in the coffin of some of those businesses. So in light of this summer, will the Prime Minister give me the pleasure of showing him round Paynton Zoo and seeing this outstanding, amazing tourism attraction in Torbay, one of many across the west of England who are sadly being massively impacted by this jobs tax?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's very... Well, look, may I start by wishing Jenny, his guide dog, a very happy birthday, I think, for yesterday. 6 years old, although she doesn't look particularly interested in my answer, I have to say. Mr. Speaker, look, I do recognise the importance of tourism to his beautiful constituency. I've been there many times, worked there for a short time, and driving growth and creating jobs. We've announced a new Visitor Economy Advisory Council, which will work with business to deliver a new strategy focused on supporting growth and the tourism industry. Visit Britain has also launched a new international marketing campaign to showcase Britain's incredible heritage, culture and landscapes, and I know the Minister of Tourism will be happy to keep him updated.
Charlotte Little.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Criminal Injuries Compensation Scheme hasn't been uprated with inflation since 2012, meaning compensation for victims of violent crime, including rape and child abuse, is worth less than half what it was then in real terms. The consultation response published before Easter said there wasn't the money to look at changing the scope, tariffs or time limits, despite expert advice and the recommendations of the ICSA review. So will the Prime Minister commit to properly funding the Ministry of Justice to do this vital reform work so victims and their needs can become a priority instead of an afterthought?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable friend knows my personal commitment to delivering justice for victims of crime who've been completely failed over the last 14 years. We are improving access to compensation through better online systems and equipping staff with the skills they need to better support victims. We are, of course, also consulting on a revised Victims Code that will increase the powers of the Victims Commissioner to ensure more accountability, and I'm happy to ensure that she meets the relevant minister to discuss those issues.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, can I also wish everyone a happy St George's Day? And can I also associate myself with the remarks about the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis on Easter Monday? Being married to a Catholic, I know the profound loss for millions in Britain and across the world. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister now accept that when he said that it was the law that trans women were women, he was wrong?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I welcome the Supreme Court ruling on this issue. It brings clarity and it will give confidence to women and, of course, to service providers. The Equality and Human Rights Commission will now issue updated guidance, and it's important that that happens and that all service providers then act accordingly. This government's approach and my approach has been as follows: to support and implement the Supreme Court ruling, and we will; to continue to protect single-sex spaces based on biological sex, and we will; but also to ensure that trans people are treated with respect, and we will; and to ensure that everybody is given dignity in their everyday lives. I do think this is the time now to lower the temperature, to move forward and to conduct this debate with the care and compassion that it deserves. And I think that should unite the whole House.
Mr. Speaker, he can't bring himself to admit that he was wrong. That was the question. But he spoke about respect and dignity and compassion and lowering the temperature. So will he now apologise to the member for Canterbury, the very brave member for Canterbury, for hounding her out of the Labour Party simply for telling the truth?
Mr. Speaker, I've always approached this on the basis that we should treat everyone with dignity and respect, whatever their different views, and I'll continue to do so. And I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, for why. Because when we lose sight of that approach and make this a political football, as happened in the past, then we end up with the spectacle of a decent man, and he was a decent man, the previous Prime Minister, diminishing himself at this dispatch box by making trans jokes whilst the mother of a murdered trans teenager watched from the public gallery just up there. That will never be my approach. My approach will be to support the ruling, to protect single-sex spaces and treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I believe there's a consensus in this House and the country for that approach.
Mr. Speaker, there was no apology for the member for Canterbury. There is no taking of responsibility. He talks about political football. He practically kicked her out of his party. Constructive dismissal. Constructive dismissal. He talks about my predecessor. What about the abuse I faced from his MPs calling me a transphobe for supporting what the Supreme Court has now clarified in his words? And where was he? He hid for 6 days without commenting on the Supreme Court judgment. Why did it take him so long to respond? Isn't it because he was scared?
Mr. Speaker, the only fiction here is the idea she delivered anything in office. She held the post of Minister for Women and Equalities for 2 years, and she did precisely nothing. She provided no clarity on the law, did nothing to improve women's lives, which got materially worse under her watch. They talk, for example, about hospitals and mixed-sex wards, uphill and down-dale. What happened in the last decade? The use of mixed-sex wards in our NHS rose by 2,000%. And there's a pattern of behaviour here. Women and Equalities Minister failed to do anything for women. The Trade Minister, who failed to get a trade deal with the US. The Business Minister, who failed to get a deal with British Steel. She's a spectator, not a leader.
Mr. Speaker, I will tell him what I did. I stopped the gender... I will. Yes. When his Labour leader in Scotland was whipping his MSPs to get male rapists into women's prisons, I stopped that gender recognition bill. I helped commission the Cass review. I replaced the guidance on single-sex toilets. I made sure that the puberty blockers issue was resolved while he was sitting there cheering on the ideology that was taking away safe spaces. The Prime Minister stayed silent last week, presumably waiting for what Morgan McSweeney thinks. On his WhatsApp groups, some of his closest ministers were plotting to overturn the Supreme Court decision. Labour MP after Labour MP stood up yesterday and challenged the ruling. How can we take his government seriously on this?
Well, I think the WhatsApp group you should be worried about is the one of his shadow Justice Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the mask has slipped just 1 week before the elections because the Shadow Justice Secretary is not here, a man who's doing everything he can to replace her. the man that most of them want as leader of their party, has admitted that Reform and the Tories are working together. He said, I want this fight to be united. He said he's determined to bring this coalition, he calls it, together one way or another. Well, I think we know what that means. Every Tory voter is appalled at the thought of paying for the NHS. Every Reform voter who hates what the Tories did the last 14 years, they're not Conservatives, they're a con.
Who's playing political football now? He's got no answers, Mr. Speaker. He's got no answers. Yesterday, Labour MP after Labour MP challenged the ruling. He should be more worried about his backbenchers than my frontbenchers. His Labour ministers called the chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission appalling. Baroness Faulkner's role is critical to enforcing the court's judgment. She has had to put up with relentless abuse, not just from his front bench, but from activists and ideologues. Reappointing her will be a clear sign that he is taking this issue seriously. So will he commit to reappointing Baroness Faulkner when her term expires this year?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've always said the debate should be conducted properly on the principles of debate. I've said it many, many times. But I would remind the Leader of the Opposition that when they were in government, violence against women and girls reached record highs, rape prosecutions fell to record lows, and millions of women were left stuck on NHS waiting lists, unable to get the health care that they needed. Under this Labour government, NHS waiting lists down by more than 200,000, domestic abuse specialists in 999 control rooms. We've strengthened access to maternity pay, something she calls excessive. She talks about political footballs, but a coalition between Reform and the Tories being formed behind her back, we know what that means when the Shadow Justice Secretary and the member for Clacton cook up their joint manifesto. NHS charging a pro-Russia foreign policy, end to workers' rights. Just as the Love government lost control of the economy, the borders and health, in 6 short months, she's lost control of her party.
Mr. Speaker, he's clearly so uncomfortable talking about this subject. Yes. This is a choice between a Conservative party that stood up for common sense and a Labour party that bent the knee to every passing fad. This is a question about moral courage, Mr. Speaker, about doing the right thing even when it is difficult. And the truth is, he doesn't have the balls. The Prime Minister only tells people what they want to hear. He only tells people what they want to hear. He is a weather vane who twists in the wind. He cheered an ideology that denied safe spaces to women and girls because he thought it was cool to do so. He hounded a brave female MP out of his party for telling the truth he accepts now. And now he is hiding behind the Supreme Court judgment. And isn't that because he doesn't know what he actually believes?
I can only assume that sounded better when she did it in the mirror earlier on. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter what the Leader of the Opposition says, because nobody believes, none of them, that she's going to lead them into the next election anyway. It's going to be the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's away plotting, that's why he's not here today, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Clacton fighting over the bones of the Tory party. And they think Reform are going to give them their votes without changing their policy. Absolutely no way. The member for Clacton's going to do what he always does, eat the Tory party for breakfast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I wish you and the House a happy St George's Day as well. I recently had the pleasure to visit the National Gas Operations in Peterborough, where the company was announcing a £350 million investment in the UK, including 100 new jobs at least in my constituency. This investment will make Peterborough the centre of the nation's core gas and hydrogen network. But one of the big challenges that infrastructure projects like this face is the lack of available skills and training for young people. So can I ask the Prime Minister what more he can do to boost apprenticeships in places like mine and ensure we create the opportunities this country so desperately needs?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend the net zero transition is a huge economic opportunity for this country, despite the naysayers on the opposition benches. And we've had almost £44 billion of investment since July, and that will deliver jobs across the country, including in his constituency. Investment, presumably, they don't want. We're ensuring we've got skilled workers that we need, launching the Skills England and our new growth and skills offer to encourage even more apprenticeships, and supporting industry-led plan for hydrogen to deliver the workforce needed for the industry of the future.
Shred David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also wish the House and the country a happy St George's Day? And can I join the Prime Minister in paying tribute to the late Pope Francis? As a Christian myself, I found his compassion absolutely inspiring, and my prayers are with Catholics in the UK and across the world who will feel his loss particularly deeply. Mr. Speaker, I've raised with the Prime Minister before the issue of North Devon District Hospital. The last government promised to rebuild it, as they did hospitals across the southwest in places like Torbay and Musgrove Park. Unfortunately, they broke that promise, leaving appalling conditions like sewage leaks and patients being treated in corridors. So will the Prime Minister reconsider his decision to further delay the construction of new hospitals and ask his MPs to vote for our motion today for new hospitals?
Mr. Speaker, the previous programme of the party opposite was undeliverable and unaffordable, as I think he knows and accepts. We put the new hospital programme on a sustainable footing with a timeline that can be met. We're not prepared to trade on false promises as they did, and obviously we put record investment into the NHS. But I do just gently urge him to one day get a bit more serious about the funding of these measures, because every week he comes here to basically push me on two issues: to spend a lot more money, but at the same time in the next breath opposing the measures in the budget to raise the money that's necessary.
Sir Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Prime Minister, we had a funded programme at the election, and I'm disappointed with his reply. And I hope he'll actually visit some of these hospitals to see the urgent need for rebuilding. Mr. Speaker, at Merton Mead Farm in Oxfordshire last week, I saw world-class British beef farmers at work. Farmers want him to be careful in any trade deal with President Trump. They were let down by the Conservatives' appalling trade deals and worried that a bad US deal could see American agribusiness undercut them with inferior meat. So will the Prime Minister guarantee a vote in this House on any trade deal that he agrees with the United States?
Yeah. Well, he raises a really important point of real interest and importance to farmers. We will negotiate, as he would expect, in the national interest and uphold the highest animal welfare standards. We are making progress on that, and then there'll be a process if a deal is reached.
Catherine Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This time last year, train manufacturing at Alstom in Derby was grinding to a halt. On a single day, workers with a combined welding experience of nearly 1,000 years walked out of its doors. But the whole city came together with crucial backing from this Prime Minister. And what a difference a year makes. With Alstom saved and set to host the greatest gathering to celebrate 200 years of rail, and our railways coming back into public ownership with the headquarters of Great British Railways in Derby, will the Prime Minister agree that with Labour we are back on track?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, she's a fantastic champion for Derby. She's right, whether it's the workforce I met at Alstom or the workers at Hitachi in County Durham. We will support our rail industry, providing certainty that delivers jobs, investment and security for them. I met these workforces. I know how worried they were a year ago, she rightly says, when this government was in charge. I'm really proud that Derby will be the home of Great British Railways, because we're bringing railways back into public ownership, delivering better services for passengers, cutting delays and cancellations and boosting growth across the country.
Robin Swall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister and my party in regards to the condolences to the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is often referred to his time working in Northern Ireland, and I've spoken to one of his bosses who speaks of his diligence. I wonder in that vein, could he speak to his Northern Ireland team about their understanding